My beloved child. Stop scrolling for one sacred moment. What you are about to hear was meant to reach you before doubt could convince you that nothing was changing. Something has shifted behind the scenes, and the person connected to your heart has finally uncovered the truth. The distance between you was not an accident. The silence was not as simple as it appeared. And now that your soulmate knows who stood between you, an emotion they can no longer hide has risen within them. Do not mistake their fury for hatred or a desire for revenge. It is the fire of awakening, the overwhelming realization that precious time was taken from both of you. They are looking back at missed conversations, delayed decisions, and moments when they almost followed their heart but allowed another voice to redirect them. For the first time, all those scattered memories are forming one undeniable picture. Yet the most astonishing piece has not surfaced completely. Stay here, because this discovery began with something so small that almost anyone else would have ignored it. A familiar sentence. A tiny contradiction. A detail spoken carelessly by someone who believed the past could never be questioned. Your soulmate heard it, and their entire expression changed. The words did not match what they had been told before. In that instant, a locked door inside their mind opened. They did not react immediately. Something deeper instructed them to remain quiet and listen. While the other person continued talking, your soulmate began remembering every warning they had received about you. They remembered who delivered those warnings, when they were spoken, and how strangely convenient they had seemed. What once sounded like concern now carried the unmistakable echo of interference. There had always been someone close enough to observe this connection but not honest enough to celebrate it. This person recognized the bond before either of you understood its depth. They saw how your soulmate's energy changed whenever your name appeared. They noticed the softness in their eyes, the hope in their voice, and the rare peace that entered the room whenever the possibility of you was mentioned. Instead of honoring that light, they became unsettled by it. That uneasiness did not reveal itself openly. It wore a careful disguise. It sounded like advice. It appeared as protection. It arrived in sentences such as, "I only want what is best for you," or, "You should be cautious before trusting this." The person never commanded your soulmate to walk away. They were far more calculated than that. They planted questions and allowed fear to grow around them. Your soulmate did not know those questions had been chosen deliberately. They believed the person speaking had no reason to mislead them. That trust became the doorway through which confusion entered. Every time your soulmate felt ready to reach toward you, a new concern appeared. Every time their heart grew certain, another carefully placed rumor made them hesitate. But now the pattern is visible, and they cannot believe how long it remained hidden. Heaven witnessed every moment you felt the connection pulling away without explanation. You wondered if you had imagined the closeness. You questioned whether your kindness had been misunderstood or whether your presence had somehow become too much. You searched your memories for the mistake that could explain the sudden change. Yet the answer was never hidden inside your heart. It lived inside conversations you were never allowed to hear. That is why this revelation feels so personal. Your soulmate is beginning to understand that you carried blame for decisions you did not make. You endured silence created by words you never spoke. You were judged according to a version of events that someone else quietly constructed. And while you struggled to make sense of the distance, the person responsible stood nearby pretending to be confused by it too. Pause here, because what happened next was no coincidence. Your soulmate found an old message, not a romantic message, not a dramatic confession, but a simple exchange that revealed a timeline. The date on it proved that someone knew the truth before they claimed to know it. It showed that the same person who warned your soulmate about you had previously described you in an entirely different way. At first, your soulmate thought they were misreading it. They checked the date again. They reread the conversation slowly. Then they compared it with a memory they had carried for months. The contradiction was undeniable. The person had praised your character privately, then later questioned it when speaking directly to your soulmate. That change was not caused by anything you had done. It began when your connection started becoming serious. A wave of understanding moved through your soulmate so strongly that they had to sit down. They remembered a particular evening when they were seconds away from contacting you. They had already written the opening words. Their finger hovered over the screen, and their heart was racing with hope. Then this same person called. By the end of that conversation, the message to you had been erased. Until now, your soulmate believed that was their own decision. They considered it proof that perhaps they had not been ready. But the old message awakened the memory of what had been said during that call. The person had introduced a claim about you that sounded specific enough to be true. Your soulmate never asked where it came from. They trusted the speaker and withdrew before giving you the chance to answer. Now they have discovered that the claim could not have been true. The timeline makes it impossible. You were blamed for saying something at a time when you were not even present for the conversation. Someone borrowed another person's words, attached your name to them, and allowed your soulmate to believe the worst. The realization has left them shaken. Not because they doubt you now, but because they finally see how unfairly you were treated. Do not skip this moment, because their anger is not only directed toward the one who interfered. A portion of it is directed inward. Your soulmate is asking why they did not come to you. Why did they accept another person's interpretation instead of seeking your truth? Why did they allow fear to speak louder than the peace they always felt around you? Those questions are opening a deeper wound. They remember your patience. They remember how you never forced them to choose, never demanded an explanation they were not ready to give, and never tried to make them feel guilty for their confusion. At the time, your quiet dignity made it easier for them to believe you had simply moved on. Now they realize your silence may have been the sound of a heart protecting itself from more undeserved pain. This is where the story turns, because your soulmate is no longer satisfied with one contradiction. They have begun tracing everything. Every conversation. Every interruption. Every strange coincidence that placed this person nearby whenever the two of you were about to move closer. The pattern is larger than they expected, and each new detail leads toward the same source. There was the invitation you supposedly declined, though it never reached you. There was the personal question your soulmate believed you ignored, though no one ever asked it. There was the gathering where both of you were told the other would not attend. There was even a moment when your soulmate was informed that you had spoken coldly about them, though the person repeating the story refused to provide your exact words. Back then, these incidents seemed unrelated. Now they fit together with unsettling precision. Each one created just enough uncertainty to delay a conversation. None was dramatic enough to demand proof. That was how the interference survived. It lived in the space between certainty and suspicion, where the heart becomes tired of asking questions and begins protecting itself with distance. Yet heaven did not allow the false pattern to remain forever. Truth rarely arrives with noise. Sometimes it enters through the one detail a careless person forgets to hide. That is what happened here. The person who blocked this connection grew comfortable. They believed your soulmate had fully accepted the false story. They assumed your name no longer carried power. Then they spoke one sentence too many. Your soulmate asked a calm question, "How did you know that?" The room changed. The person hesitated. It was only for a second, but your soulmate noticed. Their answer came too quickly after that pause and contained a detail that had never been shared publicly. It was something only you, your soulmate, and one other person could have known. Yet somehow, this trusted voice knew it, and they could not explain how. Your soulmate did not accuse them. They simply watched. That silence became more powerful than confrontation. The person began offering explanations that had not been requested. They changed one detail, then another. They tried to laugh away the contradiction, but the warmth had already left your soulmate's eyes. For the first time, the person realized their influence was slipping. What they did not know was that your soulmate had already found the old message. The question was not an attempt to. What they did not learn the truth. It was a test. Your soulmate wanted to see whether the person would answer honestly when given one final opportunity. Instead, they watched another life form in real time. Something inside your soulmate broke free at that moment. It was not the connection between you. It was the chain of misplaced trust that had kept them obedient to another person's version of events. They suddenly saw how often their emotions had been guided. Concern had been used as a leash. Loyalty had been turned into blindness. Love had been made to look dangerous simply because it could not be controlled. The one who interfered feared more than losing influence. They feared what your connection revealed about them. Around you, your soulmate became clearer, stronger, and more willing to make independent choices. They stopped seeking constant approval. They began imagining a future guided by inner peace instead of obligation. To someone who depended on being needed, your presence felt like a threat. You never tried to take your soulmate away from anyone. Your heart did not arrive carrying division. You wanted honesty, balance, and the freedom for both people to remain whole. Yet precisely because your love did not demand control, it exposed the control that already existed. Your gentleness became a mirror, and not everyone liked what that mirror revealed. This is why the blocker could never openly say, "I am afraid of losing my place." Instead, they made you appear unreliable. They presented your independence as indifference. They described your sensitivity as weakness one day and as manipulation the next. Whatever quality your soulmate admired in you was quietly reinterpreted until admiration became uncertainty. But a false interpretation cannot permanently erase what the heart has directly experienced. Your soulmate kept remembering the difference between how they felt with you and how others described you. When they were near you, their spirit settled. When they listened to warnings about you, anxiety returned. For too long, they assumed anxiety was intuition. Now they understand it may have been someone else's fear placed inside them. This realization is changing the way they remember everything. Moments they once dismissed as ordinary now glow with meaning. They recall the way you listened without preparing your next reply. They remember how you noticed changes in their mood before anyone else did. They remember a day when you offered encouragement without knowing how badly they needed it. Those memories survived every rumor because they were real. And there is one memory they cannot stop replaying. It happened shortly before the distance became unmistakable. You looked at them as if you were about to say something important. Your soulmate felt it. They nearly asked you to continue, but the person who had been interfering suddenly appeared. The moment vanished, and neither of you recovered it. Your soulmate now wonders what you would have said. Were you about to confess what the connection meant to you? Were you going to explain something that could have prevented months of confusion? Did you notice the interruption and decide your truth was no longer welcome? These questions have become impossible for them to silence. Stay close, because another revelation is forming around that interrupted moment. Your soulmate recently learned that the person did not arrive there accidentally. They had been told where you would be. Someone sent them a message shortly before they appeared. And the wording of that message suggests they already knew you and your soulmate were about to speak privately. This means the interference was not merely emotional advice given afterward. At least once, it was planned in advance. Someone anticipated the possibility of honesty between you and acted before it could happen. When your soulmate understood this, their disbelief turned into a fierce determination. They no longer wanted fragments. They wanted the entire truth. They began asking careful questions of people who had no reason to coordinate their answers. The first person remembered hearing that you were not interested. The second had been told your soulmate wanted space. A third recalled being asked not to mention an event to you because your presence would supposedly create discomfort. No one had questioned these instructions at the time. Now their accounts point toward one repeated messenger. The same name keeps appearing. Your soulmate is furious because this person stood close enough to witness their sadness afterward. They saw your soulmate wondering why you had withdrawn. They watched them pretend not to care. They heard them speak your name with quiet disappointment. Yet instead of correcting the misunderstanding, they reinforced it. Worse still, this person may have approached you in a similar way. Think carefully about any moment when someone claimed to speak on your soulmate's behalf. Did they suggest that your presence was unwelcome? Did they imply your soulmate had already chosen another path? Did they encourage you to let go while pretending the advice came from compassion? What sounded final may never have come from your soulmate at all. Heaven saw how those words reached you. They entered when you were already exhausted from uncertainty. You did not want to chase someone who seemed unwilling to meet you halfway. You chose self-respect, even though stepping back hurt more than anyone knew. The person who interfered counted on that dignity. They knew you would not force your way through a closed door. But the door was never truly closed by either of you. Someone stood between you, holding it in place while telling each side that the other had turned the key. This is the image your soulmate now carries, and it is why their emotions have become so intense. They understand that both of you may have been waiting on opposite sides of the same manufactured silence. There is no fear in this revelation, only the painful clarity that arrives before freedom. You are not being asked to hate the person responsible. Hatred would bind you to the very energy you are meant to outgrow. Instead, you are being invited to recognize the truth without shrinking from it. Compassion does not require you to call manipulation love. Your soulmate is learning this lesson now. For years, they may have confused loyalty with surrender. They believed honoring someone meant never questioning their motives. They mistook familiarity for safety and advice for wisdom. Your connection challenged those beliefs because loving you required them to trust their own heart. That was the step they were once afraid to take. Now the fear is losing its authority. Truth has given them something stronger than anger, resolve. They are no longer asking whether interference occurred. They are asking how far it went, how many opportunities were altered, and whether any message from you was hidden, changed, or deliberately left unanswered. That final question led them somewhere unexpected. There was a message your soulmate had waited for, a message they believed you never sent. They had told almost no one how deeply the silence affected them. Outwardly, they acted unbothered. Privately, they checked their phone more often than they would admit. Every notification made their heart leap before falling again. Eventually, they accepted that no answer was coming. But now they have reason to believe you did answer. An old device. A synced account. A conversation marked in a way your soulmate does not remember. Nothing dramatic at first glance, only a gap where the sequence should have continued. Yet when they compared it with another record, the gap became impossible to ignore. A message existed during that time, but it was no longer where it should have been. Your soulmate's hands trembled as they followed the trail. The account history showed activity at an hour when they had been away from the device. Someone with access had opened the conversation. Minutes later, another action occurred. The details were incomplete, but the timing aligned with the night your soulmate waited for you. This is the revelation they have not yet spoken aloud. If the missing message was yours, then the silence that wounded both of you was deliberately created. Your soulmate did not ignore you. They may never have known you reached out. And you may have interpreted